to the first understory. It's just a podcast kind of series talking to people in the electronic music community about music, culture, just whatever flows. So this is Ed of Snakepit.
Hi, everybody out there in TV land.
So Ed has 3 of the largest DIY analog synths in the world. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. You can probably see the black one over here. This is called Mongo. It's a Moog style synthesizer. This is where I get started. I made a little one about 12 years ago. And I started building a little one to see if I liked DIY synthesis. And 10 years later, I had built this whole room. So there's 3 of the largest ones, largest analog synths in the world. There's a Buchla style one, a Serge style one, a Moog style one, and a bunch of other stuff, ARP 2600 and more.
This is honestly impressive for only 10 years. It would have taken me my entire lifetime, I think, to do this, and they're beautifully done. So you, DIY, what does that mean?
So it means do it yourself, right? But there's various ways to do DIY. You can get into it pretty easily with kits and so on, but this is back 12 years ago, and there wasn't as much stuff available and information available. So I built these completely from scratch. So the printed circuit boards are made with ironing a resist of the circuit onto a copper-clad laminate and etching it in acid, and then drilling out hundreds of little holes, stuffing all the components in, then building all of the panels, designing the panels, and putting all the components in. And then the hard part is figuring out how to fix it when it doesn't work.
Oh yeah, that's the fun with any kind of tech. So like the cabinets, the facing, the knobs, all of it just is components that you put together by hand.
Right.
Wow, that's impressive. So what were you doing before synths?
Well, I got started on this whole thing by wanting to fulfill a kind of a childhood dream that I didn't have time for of playing the piano. So I had a MIDI controller and some Ableton software, and I started in to learn how to play piano. And the digital audio workstation led to software synthesizers. Mm-hmm. And then I started researching in hardware and somehow got onto the DIY thing of people who had built things. And I got into it in a very granular level. Learning the circuits from the 60s and how the whole thing worked. And after about 6 months of this, I was just obsessed with it. And I gave myself a talking to. I said, dude, you got to get a life. You're spending too much time with this. And I said, but I know how to build one of these. I'm going to build a little one and see if I like it.
Yeah.
And I was just smitten by it. I loved the building process. I loved the research to be able to figure out how to do it, how to implement it, various ways to implement it. I like the parts search because some of these are old parts that you can't find very easily anymore. Mm-hmm. And then I was just amazed by the sound and the workflow, and that's why I kept building, is because it was just so much fun.
And all of this from wanting to play the piano.
Yeah.
You took quite a side quest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the sound and how synths work.
Okay. Well, these are in general all analog circuits. So what that means is very rarely do you have digital chips controlling things. You're working with discrete components like transistors and basic integrated circuits, capacitors, resistors, and so on, to build basically sounds. You generate sounds and you control those sounds through what's called control voltage. So if you think very simple way to think about it. If you think about an oscillator that makes a tone, just goes boop, it's not very interesting. So there's a few things you can do with that. You can control the amplitude of it. You can make it louder and softer, using a knob like you might use on your amplifier, right? And if you build a circuit that controls the turning of that knob, then you can start to shape the amplitude of the sound, the volume of the sound. And you can do the same thing with frequency. It's like a frequency knob. You can turn it, goes whoop, whoop. You can control that, and then you control the timbre of the sound through filters and other ways.
Yeah.
And then control that. And what you do is, through these circuits, you build up a scheme that allows you to do musical things. Some of it's with a keyboard, some of it's with no keyboard, some of it you interact with the knobs and the controls and so on, and some of it is just generative. It just goes on its own.
Yeah. And you must have great short-term memory, I'd imagine, if you're making music, because you're plugging patch cables from different. So like, how do you remember when you're making a song, or how do you recall where to plug things in? I would get so lost.
Well, I get lost too. It depends how complicated it is, because if you're building up a fairly simple synth voice, just to play on the keyboard, then it's pretty basic. You don't have that much to remember. All you're doing is really shaping the sound a little bit with the envelope and the oscillators. But if you've built up something that's like this, where you have maybe 30 or 40 different synth voices that all come into a mixer, and you're going to do a 30-minute set or two 30-minute sets, then I end up labeling things so I remember where things are, because there's a lot of different parameters you can play with in order to make your set. Yeah.
And now you do multiple different music projects, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your projects and kind of the history of your music and where you come
Sure.
from?
Sure. I'm going to start from the beginning.
Okay.
So as you can see, I'm not a youngster. I got started listening to music when it was just AM radio. There was really no FM radio. That was the source of music, and it was the bubblegum pop in heavy rotation. And then when FM radio came along in the 70s, the FM radio stations weren't allowed to duplicate what they had on AM to FM. Okay. So that's the reason why they went to an all album format a lot of times and did music that was very different from what was on AM radio. That was the impetus behind it. They weren't allowed to do that.
Okay.
So FM radio was like a watershed of stuff that wasn't being force-fed to you. This was DJs late at night.
Underground.
It really was underground, and I lived around the Boston area, and we could, at night, the FM signals were strong enough that they bounced off the ionosphere, and you could get radio stations from Chicago. Wow. For today, where we get everything from everywhere instantaneously all the time, you have to remember back then, we just had a local radio station, and that was it. Cool. So to listen to stuff on FM radio, full album stuff you've never heard before, was just an eye opener. Yeah, it was really thrilling. So I grew up listening to the what is now classic rock albums and the singer-songwriters back in the day. But we also got turned on to some interesting music. And I started listening to Pink Floyd back before anybody knew who Pink Floyd was.
Probably never heard of him.
No, nobody. I had one friend that I listened to it with, and his dad worked in Boston and got us tickets to a Pink Floyd show in the spring of 1973. And so we were just, early teenagers
Yeah.
back then. We were just kids. And we went to this show in the Boston Music Hall. And it's a relatively small venue by modern standards. And it was in quadraphonic. And they had a big mixing desk out in the middle. And I found out years later that Alan Parsons was on the mixing desk. And they played The Dark Side of the Moon live a year before it was released.
Wow, that's really cool.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
It was a long year to wait to listen to that. And that really changed my whole music life back then.
I can relate a little bit. So I'm really into Romanian minimal music, and they have kind of this culture of exclusivity. And so I just bought my first record ever because I was finally able to hunt down an unreleased track and found it the day it was released. And so I was like, well, I have to buy a record now. And so it wasn't as long of a wait, but I can kind of relate to like having music that you heard and you can't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll skip forward to a lifetime of music. And I lived all over the world, so I had a chance to listen to a lot of different music and to see things from a different perspective. But when I moved to Park City about 15 years ago, a few years into that, I decided on the piano story to learn piano and get into the music. And
now, had you played any kind of music before that?
A little bit. I played some violin, some very bad violin in the school orchestra, which was also pretty bad, and the requisite 3 or 4 chords on a guitar. But that was about it. So
Okay.
I didn't know too much about music. So I started to learn music from the ground up, and getting into it on a level where you're building the components and you're listening to the basic sounds, you're building the sounds. I liken it to a composer works or a rock star composing for the band. You're working pretty much with fixed instruments. So if you've got an orchestra, you've got the string section and the bass, and you write for those instruments. And in a rock band, it's typically a 4-piece rock band, and you can throw some ear candy in there. But the instruments are basically what you have to work with. And with synthesis, you're designing everything from scratch. And I'm not a purist. I use anything from anywhere. So I use acoustic instruments, I use found sounds, I use dialogue from old obscure movies.
Use my voice on one.
I have your voice on one, yep, for a spoken word album. But that freedom, I think, for a lot of people, they don't like it. They don't know where to begin. There's too many choices.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I don't find it that way. I love having the whole palette and then deciding, and you can put the constraints in later.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. And discovering a digital audio workstation, I had no idea that that's how music was made. I had no clue. I didn't know at all. And finding out that you can actually make your own music when you're in your 50s is an interesting path.
It's accessible, anybody can get the software or, maybe buy a synthesizer, but it's a lot more accessible probably than it was a long time ago. So are you going to show us some of your music at some point?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you want to wait till the end, or do you want to show something now?
Let's wait for a second. You can figure out how you want me to show it live or play some stuff or whatever.
I'd like you to show us live. Yeah. So, okay, so that was
anytime. You tell me when.
Okay, so that was your path in music.
Well, then, yeah. So I got started in it. It was a singular journey by myself. And then a few years later, I met a guitarist at a party next door.
Yeah, your neighbor.
Yeah, he also lived in town, and we started collaborating, and that's when I realized I could do something more than just putting loops together and doing stuff on my own.
Yeah.
And so we've done close to 40 albums now.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
And I've asked you this before. How long does it take to finish an album?
It depends how you do it. if you're doing fairly elaborate things that are arranged and you're actually sort of writing the music, chord progressions and leads and all the rest of that, it can take a long time to get the ideas to move from, say, an 8-bar loop into something that's a polished track.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to put it on the shelf and come back to it. So it can take a long time to do a single track.
Yeah.
And then other times, and a lot of the time now that I've got experience in making songs and how to make the synths make noise, I do a lot of improvisational things that start with a bunch of patches, and then we just start in and jam, and the album's nearly finished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like you to meet a friend of mine, Tucker. What's up, Tucker? He wants to do a music project like that where it's just like jam start to finish, sit down and do it. So
yeah,
he'd probably enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, and so we do things like that, and other things are very, very complicated. There's sometimes 130 tracks or something of stuff, and I don't think the listener really appreciates how much stuff is in an album that has a lot of different nuances to the sound and complex drums and so on.
Yeah.
So it depends. Depends on the project, and I like to keep at least 5 or 6 projects going at the same time.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah. And I create what's called seeds. I probably make what I call seeds. They're the ideas for a track. I probably do a dozen of them a week. And I have a backlog of hundreds of them that I can draw from and go in, and you put them on the shelf and you come back to them, and all of a sudden you have new ideas for how to turn it into something that's closer to a finished track.
Okay. Yeah. So you had mentioned something you said a minute ago. So how, people not appreciating what goes into the music, right? So in Salt Lake, as you know, I'm doing shows now, and so I have my second event coming up, and it's going to be techno focused, minimal and like raw and hypnotic techno, but we're having a fully analog live set, and so I'm excited about that. And then a hybrid live, so hybrid DJing and live, and so I'm hoping to bring a little bit more awareness to kind of what goes into making music. There's a lot of producers in Salt Lake and a lot of techno producers, and so kind of wanting to bring focus to that and encourage people to appreciate it, and also encouraging the producers to maybe try and do some live sets and give a little bit of the back, behind the scenes to the community to bring awareness to that. And so do you have any advice for new up and coming producers trying to make it? Or
Well, first of all, there's you're not alone. I think that's one of the I think
they know that.
there's a pretty good community of musicians that do studio work, live work. There's the Synth Alliance, which is just a loose knit group of people, but we're really gaining a lot of traction in terms of live things that are out in small venues. They're usually a lot of times free or very inexpensive. So I think one of the important things is to reach out to other people.
I think community is something I really want to focus on with my projects and stuff, and really just working together and not drop the ego and all that, and just be open to working together. And it's all about the music in the end. So let's see where we are on time. Not too bad. Okay, so you're also an artist. How does that play into your music?
Well, I'm not really a musician. I sort of steal the term from Brian Eno. I'm a non-musician musician. So I play a lot of instruments, but I don't play any of them very well. But it's enough to get the job done. And somehow, with 40 albums, I guess and some live shows under my belt, I guess I am a musician, but I'm reluctant to call myself that. And
so
it's the same thing.
Imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah, and it's the same thing with artwork. I'm not very good at traditional art, drawing and painting and that kind of art, but I started to get into 3D fractals shortly after I started music. I don't really remember exactly how I got drawn to it, but I found it, a program called Mandelbulb 3D that I use, and it allows you to create these surrealistic worlds. And I got into that and started doing it, and I was using it for album covers. But I make far more art than you can make albums. So I've done thousands of these.
You have so many.
Yeah, I've done thousands of these. I did thousands of these still images that are super organic looking, because fractals are math, and that's what makes up our bodies. It's the symmetry of our body. It's why we have 2 legs, 2 arms. It's the Fibonacci ratio of this one, down to the end. It's in broccoli. It's in clouds. It's in fractals. Fractals are everywhere.
Yeah.
So I got going on the fractal art and just kept refining it and doing more and more of it. And I knew you could animate them, but I thought, there's no way, like music, there's no way I could possibly ever do this. And I just got started in it and did a few test runs and realized that it was achievable. And then I worked at it and put in a little server farm, just some cheap laptops that are all rendering 24/7 to make the fractals. And I put them together into a movie with the music that we've made.
Yeah, I was at the premiere, whatever you did at Ruby's.
Yeah, but that's a couple years into it now.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So
how long have you been doing that art?
Probably close. I've been doing the art almost as long as I've been building the synthesizers.
Okay.
And I found that the fractal art inspired me to create the music. So I usually start with a piece of art and say, this is the way that I want it to sound. And that's my starting point for the music. Not always, but a lot of times that's how I start it.
That's a really cool concept.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so the thing at Broovies, that was you and some of the Synthalites guys. There was multiple of you that had different projects.
Yeah, there were 2 projects we did. Both of them here in the Snakepit, and put an album out, and then I made movies to go along with the album. So they're typically around 40 minutes, the album length kind of movies, and they're super high definition and are very, very trippy.
I was going to say very psychedelic.
Yeah, very psychedelic. Yeah, they're the modern day version of Liquid Light Show from the 70s.
Yeah. So let's see. So over the past 10 years, in all this project, going from I want to learn to play the piano to now this. What have you learned over the past 10 years, and what do you understand now about music that you just couldn't have fathomed before?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's a little like developing your musical taste, even if you aren't a musician. I find that the things that are easily accessible, a catchy pop tune, doesn't last very long. You get bored with it pretty quickly. And some of the things that a friend might introduce you to some completely off-the-wall music you've never heard of before. My journey into new stuff was with King Crimson and Robert Fripp. Very discordant. And I used to say, oh man, this is music to commit suicide to. I couldn't really understand it or hear it.
Discordance and dissonance is my very most favorite element in music. I love it so much.
Yep, it's the way we create tension, right? But I was drawn to it, and the more I listened to it, the more I liked it, and it took a long time. It took a couple of years before I really found it to be super engaging, and I liked it. And I subsequently got to see King Crimson live outside amphitheater kind of thing, and the musicianship is just beyond belief. But when I got started in the electronic music, it completely changed the way that I listened to things. All of a sudden, little tiny sounds, when amplified, become a basis for an entire track.
Yeah, I say it all the time, that one track, that can be the one little blip or click that happens every 64 beats, that if that click or blip wasn't there, the track would be flat. Or, you know, you start to notice like the little minutia of it.
Right. And so I started, when I got going on electronic music, I did the deep dive. I went in and I just researched everything I could find on where it came from, what the original instruments were like. And I learned that there was a whole world out there that's been going since we had electricity, literally.
Yeah, you did a talk at the Hackerspace and went over the history of it, and it was fascinating. Yeah, I wish we had time for you to do that whole presentation right now.
But that really got me to listen to sounds and to move beyond the 4/4 beat, or the need to have drums in a track, or something completely abstract. It taught me to listen and to compose in a way that I would have never gotten to. And that's been the fun part.
Yeah. Now, as far as, do you have a favorite? So you make kind of more experimental and like ambient type sound, right?
It depends. We do a range of stuff that is from really jazzy, but jazzy with a twist. Usually, there's something not quite fit for a jazz environment. Yeah, sometimes discordant, but also odd beats, odd time signatures are nothing new to jazz, but these are just wacky kind of things, through to rock and roll-y stuff, space music, Berlin School, kind of Tangerine Dream kind of things, through to very abstract soundscapes, if you will, that are more suitable for a soundtrack, maybe. Yeah.
Now, so you know, I'm like a house and techno person.
Yeah.
You said you've researched all the other stuff. If you had to pick a more structured electronic music genre, is there one that you like the best?
I like it all to some degree. I got started when I started making electronic music, I had no idea which way I was going to go. I mean, there was so much out there that was interesting. And I made techno music, and I made house music, and I made glitchy, very contemporary music. And I found that I liked it. It was fun, but it wasn't me. I really wanted to do something that other people weren't doing. And for me anyway, there's plenty of space in music to do mainstream music, popular music, to do cover bands that are other people's music, the whole classical realm. You know, there aren't very many live composers. There's lots of them, but there's the main symphony orchestras are sticking to the tried and true stuff that was written hundreds of years ago. Yeah. But for me, the adventure lies in coming up with something that's a complete surprise to me.
Yeah.
And so moving, you know, that's where I was pulled towards. Yeah.
So I asked you this before about that, and so my thoughts are kind of the same as yours as far as not making stuff. If you're already behind the curve, if you're trying to emulate, like, oh, I'm going to make this kind of techno or this kind of house, you're not going to, because by the time you get good at it, it's going to be moved on to the next thing by somebody who is doing their own thing, an original. So I think it's important to not try to emulate and do your own thing.
Yeah. I like to listen to that music. It's the music that I make it has no place in a place where people want to dance.
Yeah,
you know, there's a it's not really nightclub music.
You'd be surprised. There's some forest raves that would appreciate some of your stuff.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. And your visuals.
Yeah, I think the visuals would work.
So let's see. Music culture today, do you think it's a lot different now than when you were young and, you know, Pink Floyd days, or do you think it's kind of the artists and the culture around it, do you think it's pretty similar as far as just the societal aspects of it and how it operates?
I think the biggest change is just availability of and access to music, which allows you to listen to so many different things, and that has an influence on the artists. A lot of the genres are blended, and you can pick a little bit of everything and bring it into a new modern sound. And I think that's the real difference. The other thing is in the way that music is made, and our ability to make music now is so radically different. If you think back to the 70s, first of all, you had to be really good, and you had to fit a niche. You had to be with a record label because distribution required a record factory.
Oh, yes.
You know, and that's just so different.
Yeah, the social media and self-promotion and community promotion and it's everybody has a shot today. It's a lot more accessible.
But I think there are also a lot of dangers in that. I don't post on Instagram. It's okay. It's just another extra thing for to do.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense to be able to see things quickly and find out, do I like this or not? But I think there's also a danger that becomes the instant gratification and sensational stuff.
Yeah.
If it's not sensational in the first 10 seconds, people are going to move on to watching surfing dogs or something.
And the popularity contest of it all.
And the popularity contest.
People who have good social media managers or know how to play that social engineering game, or, you know, they become more successful even if they aren't necessarily better artists. And there's probably tons of amazing artists out there not getting any recognition, or because they care to be in the studio more than on Instagram.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there's also music has always been a business, right? But there's the business pull of people. The amount of time and money that goes into big acts is just so big now. It was always big, but it's just so big now that I think it's difficult for young people. You get brainwashed into listening to what's pushed onto you.
Yeah.
And so it's you have to work at finding excellent artists that really speak to you, that aren't being pushed on you by big business.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like why I started doing what I'm doing. Is I really love minimal music, and a lot of people don't like it. They think it's boring, and I think again it's one of those things that it's a refined palate. Over time, you start to appreciate music more, and rather than the big showy, pop techno or house, you get this kind of refined taste for understanding it more and feeling the depth of it. And it's not just about party up here. You start feeling the more emotional depth of it and the nuance of it. And I just remember the first time I started listening to that when I was pretty young, but the first time I heard it on like big sound at an event in the forest, and
oh yeah,
it just moved me to my core, and it changed my life. And so I'm like, if I don't bring this to other people, maybe they'll never hear it, and maybe they need to. It'll make it like change their life the way it changed mine. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna throw my own parties.
Yeah, good.
So hopefully other people like it, and if not, whatever, I like it. So it'll be fun. So do you want to show us?
Sure.
Show us your toys here.
Yeah, I don't have like any songs or anything
just show us how
prepared, but
sounds.
I've got what I've got patched up here is some things that are left over. I was preparing to do a live set with a guitarist friend of mine. Oh, that's a good sound. That's a low-flying airplane. So I've got some voices that I can demonstrate some of the sounds here. Some things that kind of fit together.
Yeah.
So I'll start with something that's kind of abstract, and it might fit into a soundscape or an introduction or breakdown or something like that. you'll be able to see me over here.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, I had one more question. If you could go
Sure.
back in time and tell yourself, your younger self, if you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would you tell yourself?
You know, it's kind of like those science fiction movies where if you travel back in time, you alter the entire trajectory
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd like to say, oh, go to music school or get started in it earlier, or you know, a million other things that you could come up with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure that I can come up with an answer for that, because in my 20s I wasn't ready for this. The technology wasn't ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was working a lot more. I didn't have the time to dedicate to it,
Yeah.
and I would do it all. I would do it all pretty much again the same way. The only
Yeah.
regret that I have is music takes an incredible amount of time. It's so broad and it's so deep that there isn't enough time in a day or a lifetime. And I'm just going to run out of life before I run out of ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that.
That's the. I
Uh-huh.
think that's really the
Yeah.
key. Whatever. I think the advice is to other people though that are on that same path, which I think is where you're getting at, right? What would you do? What would you do differently?
Yeah.
Is just let it go. Just be the kind of inner child, and don't be afraid of the outcome or
Yeah.
meeting expectations or whatever. Just get in there and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let it out.
And you said this all started from a childhood dream that you had to play the piano.
Yeah.
So if you had learned to play the piano when you were a child, maybe, you know, yeah, you wouldn't have ended up with this amazing studio here. So I think I agree, like, just, yeah, everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Ed.
you.
It was awesome to
Yeah.
do this with you.
So
Appreciate
glad you
it.
guys could come up here
Yeah,
and
this
see
is the first time I've
see
got
what
to,
this madness is all about.
I've seen pictures and heard about it, but yeah, it's truly impressive in person. Beautiful, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Cool.
You're welcome.